Ladies and gentlemen, we've all been there. Someone cuts us off in traffic, a friend lets us down, a coworker says something rude, and before we know it, we're angry, frustrated, or hurt. But what if I told you there's a way to live without letting others control your emotional state, a way to walk through life unshaken, calm, and in full control of how you feel? Today, I want to share with you 8 key principles that can help you master your emotions and never let anyone steal your peace. In life, there will always be moments when someone says something that offends or hurts us. It could be a snide comment from a colleague, a careless remark from a friend, or a criticism that feels deeply personal. In these moments, it's easy to internalize the words, to let them sink in and become part of how we see ourselves. But here's the truth. Other people's words and actions are not about you. They are about them. When you truly understand this, it changes everything. One of the most important things to realize is that people act from their own perspective and experiences, and their behavior is often shaped by their internal world. If someone insults you or reacts negatively, it usually says more about their current emotional state, their past experiences, or their unresolved issues than it does about who you are. Imagine for a moment that you're walking down the street and a stranger suddenly yells at you. Now, if you take it personally, you might feel confused, angry, or hurt. You might wonder, why are they shouting at me? What did I do to deserve this? However, if you look at it from a different angle, you'll see that their outburst is not about you at all. It's possible that this person is having a bad day, facing personal struggles, or dealing with frustrations they can't control. Their outburst is an expression of their own emotions, not an indictment of you. If you allow yourself to be affected by their words, you're essentially allowing them to control your emotional state, which takes away your peace. When you make the conscious decision to not take things personally, you free yourself from the constant need for validation from others. You stop giving others the power to dictate how you feel. This is incredibly liberating because it puts you in control of your emotional responses. It allows you to live with more peace and less frustration. Taking things personally often leads to unnecessary conflict. When we interpret someone's words or actions as a personal attack, we're more likely to react defensively or even lash out. But if we pause and remind ourselves that the other person's behavior is about them, not us, we can avoid reacting in a way that escalates the situation. Instead of snapping back, you can respond with calmness, understanding, or even indifference, which often diffuses the tension. Of course, this doesn't mean that you should accept bad behavior or allow yourself to be treated poorly. It doesn't mean that you should be a doormat or let people walk all over you. Rather, it means recognizing that people's actions, especially those that are negative or hurtful, are often influenced by their own unresolved emotions, insecurities, or struggles. They may not be targeting you personally, even though it may feel that way. For instance, if a friend cancels plans at the last minute and you feel hurt, you might be tempted to take it personally. You might think, why don't they value me? They must not care about our friendship. But if you take a step back and consider that your friend could be dealing with their own challenges, perhaps they're overwhelmed at work, dealing with personal issues, or simply needing time to themselves, you'll see that their cancellation is not an attack on your worth as a friend. It's a reflection of their own life circumstance. Understanding that others' behavior is about them, not you, can also help you be more compassionate. Rather than reacting with anger or frustration, you can feel empathy for the other person. You might not agree with what they said or did, but by recognizing that they are acting out of their own pain or discomfort, you can choose to respond with kindness or distance yourself with understanding rather than reacting with bitterness or resentment. Taking things personally also ties into the idea of boundaries. When we allow others' words or actions to hurt us, we're not maintaining healthy boundaries. A healthy boundary is the ability to separate yourself from the opinions and behaviors of others. It's about recognizing that you are not responsible for how other people feel or behave, and that their actions don't define your worth. When you don't take things personally, you set a boundary between your emotional world and someone else's actions. This allows you to preserve your peace and not be at the mercy of external forces. Additionally, taking things personally often results from insecurity or self-doubt. When we don't have a strong sense of self-worth. We are more likely to internalize criticism or negative comments. We may question ourselves or feel diminished by others' words. But when you recognize that everyone has their own struggles and is often projecting their own fears or insecurities, you begin to develop a stronger sense of self. You realize that your value isn't determined by what others think of you, and their opinions can't define you unless you let them. It's also important to acknowledge that not taking things personally doesn't mean that you don't care. It simply means that you've chosen to protect your emotional well-being by not internalizing negativity. It's possible to be empathetic and care about others without allowing their actions or words to affect your mood or sense of self-worth. In fact, the more you practice not taking things personally, the more you'll find that you have the emotional space to support others without being overwhelmed by their emotions. By embracing this mindset, you'll find that you experience less stress, frustration, and anger. You'll have more peace in your day-to-day life because you won't be constantly reacting to the ups and downs of others' emotions. You'll also become more resilient in the face of challenges, able to handle difficult situations with grace and understanding. In summary, the next time someone says something hurtful or does something that seems to be aimed at you, remember this: it's not about you, it's about them. By not taking things personally, you release the hold that others have over your emotions and you reclaim your inner peace. This doesn't mean you don't care about others or that you should tolerate poor treatment. It simply means you recognize that you can choose how to respond. And in choosing not to take things personally, you free yourself to live a life of greater emotional freedom, peace, and joy. When it comes to managing our emotions, especially in tense or challenging situations, the ability to create an emotional pause is one of the most powerful tools we can develop. Emotions, particularly anger, frustration, and hurt, can take over in an instant. They flood our minds and bodies, causing us to react impulsively, often leading to regret and conflict. The emotional pause is the key to changing that automatic reaction. It gives us the time and space to process our feelings, understand them, and choose a more thoughtful response instead of reacting from a place of unchecked emotion. Creating an emotional pause starts with recognizing that emotions are powerful and immediate, but that they don't have to control us. Emotional reactions are often instinctual. They happen without our conscious thought, and they can be incredibly intense. For instance, when someone insults us or does something we perceive as unfair, we might feel a surge of anger or defensiveness. In these moments, our initial impulse is to respond quickly, often with words or actions that we might regret later. This is where the pause comes in. The first step in creating an emotional pause is awareness. Simply being aware of the emotions that are rising within us can make a significant difference in how we respond. Often, we go through life in such a rush, with our minds filled with tasks, worries, and distractions, that we don't even realize when we're getting angry, frustrated, or upset. The first step to mastering the emotional pause is to tune into our feelings, to notice when we're starting to feel triggered. This awareness gives us the opportunity to stop before we react. It's about noticing the signs in our body, like a tightening in the chest, clenching of the jaw, or the heat rising in our face, that indicate an emotional reaction is building. By noticing these signals, we can stop and choose a more intentional response. Once we become aware of the emotions within us, the next step is to pause. This doesn't mean suppressing or ignoring our feelings. Rather, it's about giving ourselves a moment to acknowledge what we're feeling without acting on it. When we feel that surge of emotion, instead of immediately engaging with the situation, we take a step back, breathe deeply, and allow ourselves a few seconds to reflect. This pause allows the emotional intensity to subside, giving us the clarity to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. It's like hitting the pause button in the middle of a fast-paced movie scene, giving us a chance to assess the situation from a more grounded place. An emotional pause also involves perspective. When emotions are high, our ability to think clearly is often clouded by our feelings. Anger, fear, frustration, and even excitement can distort our judgment. That's why the pause is essential. It allows us to gain perspective and to ask ourselves, what's really going on here? What's the bigger picture? Is this worth my emotional energy? Often, when we take a moment to step back, we realize that the situation isn't as dire as it seemed in the heat of the moment. We might see that the person who angered us is dealing with their own struggles, or that the situation is not as personal as we initially thought. The pause gives us the time to assess whether the issue is truly significant, or if it's something we can let go of without reacting. In the midst of the pause, it's also important to engage in self-talk. The way we talk to ourselves in those moments can make all the difference. Our internal dialogue can either fuel our emotional reaction or calm it down. Instead of saying, "How dare they treat me like this?" we can ask ourselves, "What is really going on here? And how can I respond in a way that is true to who I am?" Positive, compassionate self-talk can help us gain control over our emotions and avoid reacting from a place of hurt or defensiveness. It allows us to respond from a place of strength, not weakness, and to make decisions based on wisdom rather than impulse. The power of the emotional pause is that it enables us to choose our reactions. Instead of being a slave to our emotions, we become the masters of them. We decide how we want to respond to any given situation, rather than letting the situation dictate how we feel. This ability to choose is liberating because it allows us to take control of our lives, to act with purpose and intention, and to preserve our emotional well-being. Over time, this practice of pausing and reflecting before reacting becomes a habit. One that helps us maintain calm in the face of chaos, clarity in moments of confusion, and peace in times of stress. Finally, an emotional pause is not just about managing negative emotions like anger. It can also be useful in moments of overwhelming excitement or joy. Even positive emotions can cloud our judgment if we don't give ourselves the space to process them. Whether we're reacting to a negative situation or a positive one, the pause allows us to gain perspective, choose our response, and maintain emotional balance. In conclusion, creating an emotional pause is a skill that empowers us to take control of our emotional lives. It gives us the space to breathe, reflect, and respond thoughtfully. It allows us to break free from the automatic reactions that so often lead to regret and conflict, and to choose responses that align with our values and goals. With practice, the emotional pause becomes a natural part of our lives, helping us stay calm, grounded, and in control, no matter what challenges we face. One of the most difficult truths to accept in life is that we cannot control others. This truth can be frustrating and unsettling, especially when we care deeply about someone or are invested in a situation where we want things to go a certain way. Whether it's a family member, a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger, we often try to influence or change their behavior, opinions, or actions in hopes of achieving a desired outcome. However, the reality is that no matter how hard we try, we cannot control other people. Accepting this fundamental truth is not just a lesson in letting go, it's also a pathway to emotional freedom, peace, and healthier relationships. The desire to control others is a natural human instinct, rooted in the need to ensure things go according to our expectations. We often think that if we can just change someone's behavior or mindset, our lives will improve or a specific problem will be solved. This is particularly true in relationships. We might try to mold our friends, family, or partners into the people we want them to be, believing that our way of thinking or acting is the best way. However, this approach rarely leads to long-term fulfillment. In fact, trying to control others often leads to frustration, resentment, and conflict. One of the main reasons we struggle with accepting that we can't control others is because we are highly invested in the outcome. Whether it's a personal relationship or a professional situation, we have an emotional stake in how things turn out. For instance, we might want a friend to act in a certain way because we believe it will make the relationship better. Or we might want a colleague to perform a task a certain way because we think it will make the project more successful. When things don't go the way we expect, we feel disappointed, anxious, or upset. These emotions arise because deep down, we're trying to impose our will on someone else. However, the more we try to control people, the more we risk damaging the relationship. The other person can feel manipulated, disrespected, or unheard. They may even become defensive, which only leads to more tension. Instead of building a stronger bond or getting the results we desire, our attempts to control others often create distance and discord. The more we try to control others, the less control we actually have, both over the situation and over our emotional state. The more we try to control, the more we realize how little power we have. At the heart of this struggle lies a simple truth. Everyone has their own agency. Each person is an individual with their own thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. Just as we cannot control the way we think or feel, neither can we control the thoughts and feelings of others. Each person is shaped by their unique life experiences, values, and circumstances. What we may perceive as a correct or better way to behave might not resonate with someone else. They may have their own set of reasons for thinking and acting the way they do, reasons that are often beyond our comprehension or control. When we accept that we can't control others, we shift our focus inward. Instead of trying to manipulate others into conforming to our expectations, we can focus on controlling our own thoughts, reactions, and emotions. This shift is incredibly empowering. It means that instead of pouring our energy into trying to change someone else, we can invest in our own growth and emotional well-being. We can choose to respond to situations in a way that aligns with our values rather than reacting based on the behavior of others. Acceptance also means recognizing that people are not perfect and they will not always meet our expectations. Sometimes people will disappoint us. They may act in ways that frustrate or hurt us. However, by accepting that we cannot control them, we give ourselves the opportunity to embrace imperfection, both in ourselves and in others. When we stop trying to control others, we open ourselves to a deeper sense of understanding and compassion. We begin to accept people for who they truly are rather than who we want them to be. This acceptance doesn't mean that we have to agree with or condone behavior that we find unacceptable. It doesn't mean that we should passively accept harmful behavior or let others treat us poorly. It simply means that we stop trying to change or fix people. We can still set boundaries, communicate our needs, and make decisions that align with our values, but we do so from a place of acceptance, understanding that the other person's choices are theirs to make. Learning to accept that we can't control others also means letting go of expectations. Often we expect certain things from people, whether it's a certain level of effort, a specific way of communicating, or a particular outcome. These expectations create a sense of pressure, not just for others, but for ourselves. When others don't meet these expectations, we feel let down, frustrated, or even angry. But when we let go of expectations and accept people as they are, we free ourselves from the burden of disappointment. We learn to appreciate people for who they are, not for who we wish them to be. In addition, this acceptance frees us from the cycle of stress and frustration that comes with trying to control everything. It can be incredibly exhausting trying to manage other people's behavior, especially when it's something beyond our control. This exhaustion can take a toll on our mental and physical health, leading to burnout, anxiety, and resentment. When we stop trying to control others, we release ourselves from this cycle of stress. We allow ourselves to focus on what we can control: our own actions, responses, and attitudes. One of the most profound aspects of this acceptance is the realization that we are not responsible for other people's happiness or well-being. We cannot control how others feel or how they choose to live their lives. Each person is ultimately responsible for their own emotions and choices. This understanding can relieve us of the unnecessary burden of feeling responsible for others' happiness or problem. We can still care deeply for others and offer support, but we no longer take on the weight of their emotions or decisions. By accepting that we can't control others, we become more grounded, centered, and at peace with ourselves. We stop trying to fit everyone into our idealized version of how they should be, and instead we embrace the uniqueness and individuality of those around us. This acceptance not only improves our relationships, but it also leads to a greater sense of emotional freedom. We stop letting other people's actions dictate our emotional well-being. Instead, we find peace in knowing that we are only responsible for ourselves, and that is enough. In conclusion, the key to healthier, more fulfilling relationships and a calmer, more peaceful life is accepting that we can't control others. This acceptance frees us from the frustration of trying to change people and helps us focus on what we can control: ourselves. It leads to greater compassion, understanding, and peace, and allows us to create stronger, more authentic connections with those around us. Ultimately, it's through accepting others as they are that we find the freedom to live our lives on our own terms, unburdened by the need to control everything and everyone. Building inner confidence is a process that begins with the understanding that true confidence comes from within, not from external validation or circumstances. Inner confidence is the belief in oneself, the sense of self-assurance that comes from knowing who we are and trusting our abilities, even in the face of uncertainty or difficulty. It is not about being perfect or flawless, but about accepting ourselves with all our strengths and weaknesses and having the courage to face the challenges life throws our way. Building this type of confidence is essential because it empowers us to pursue our goals, handle criticism constructively, and navigate through life with resilience. At its core, inner confidence is rooted in self-acceptance. To build lasting confidence, we must first learn to accept ourselves as we are, flaws and all. This means acknowledging our mistakes, imperfections, and shortcomings, but not allowing them to define us. Many people struggle with self-acceptance because they believe they need to be perfect to feel worthy of confidence. However, no one is perfect. We all have areas for improvement, but these do not diminish our value. True confidence arises when we stop comparing ourselves to others and accept our own unique path with its ups and downs. This acceptance of who we are allows us to stop looking for approval from the outside world and to find validation within ourselves. Building inner confidence also requires us to change our mindset. Often we are our own worst critics, constantly doubting our abilities and focusing on our weaknesses. This negative self-talk chips away at our self-esteem and undermines our confidence. To break free from this pattern, we need to reframe our thoughts and replace self-doubt with self-compassion. Instead of thinking, "I'm not good enough," or "I can't do this," we can remind ourselves, "I am capable," or "I will try my best and learn along the way." By changing the way we speak to ourselves, we can build a more supportive inner dialogue that fosters confidence. Another essential aspect of building inner confidence is taking action. Confidence is not something that is simply given or granted. It is earned through experience and growth. When we take action, especially in areas where we feel unsure or intimidated, we gradually prove to ourselves that we are capable of handling challenges. Each small step we take toward our goals, even if it's uncomfortable or doesn't go perfectly, builds our self-belief. Over time, we accumulate evidence of our abilities and prove to ourselves that we are capable of more than we thought. Action breeds confidence because it demonstrates that we can rise to the occasion, no matter how daunting a task may seem at first. Part of this action involves stepping out of our comfort zones. It's easy to feel confident when we stay within the bounds of what is familiar and safe, but real growth occurs when we challenge ourselves to do things that scare us. Whether it's speaking in public, taking on a new responsibility at work, or starting a new project, pushing ourselves to try new things helps to build our resilience and confidence. The key is not to avoid fear, but to act despite it. Fear is a natural part of the process, and rather than seeing it as a barrier, we can view it as a signal that we are growing and stretching our abilities. The more we push through fear, the more confident we become in our capacity to overcome obstacles. Building inner confidence also involves setting and achieving goals. When we set goals for ourselves, we create a roadmap for success. The process of setting a goal and working toward it step by step reinforces our belief in our abilities. These goals don't have to be monumental. In fact, small, achievable goals are often more effective in building confidence. As we accomplish each goal, we gain a sense of accomplishment and pride that strengthens our self-esteem. Over time, as we continue to set and meet goals, our confidence grows because we prove to ourselves that we can set our intentions and see them through. This sense of progress helps to create a positive feedback loop where each success builds upon the last. In addition to action and achievement, it's crucial to embrace failure as a learning opportunity. Many people fear failure because they equate it with inadequacy, but failure is an inevitable part of life and an essential part of building inner confidence. When we fail, it doesn't mean we are incapable or unworthy. It simply means that we are human. and that we have an opportunity to learn and grow. Embracing failure as a stepping stone rather than a setback allows us to bounce back stronger. Each time we fail and get back up, we build our resilience and reinforce our belief in our ability to keep going regardless of the challenges we face. Another important component of building inner confidence is surrounding ourselves with positive influences. While our confidence must ultimately come from within, the people we interact with can play a significant role in shaping our mindset. When we surround ourselves with individuals who uplift and support us, we feel more encouraged to pursue our goals and believe in ourselves. Positive relationships provide a sense of security and help us to see ourselves in a better light. On the other hand, negative or toxic relationships can undermine our confidence by constantly criticizing or belittling us. It's important to cultivate relationships with people who inspire us and encourage us to grow, while distancing ourselves from those who drain our energy or reinforce our insecurities. Building inner confidence also requires mindfulness. The practice of being present in the moment helps us to focus on what we can control, rather than worrying about the past or the future. When we are mindful, we are less likely to be overwhelmed by self-doubt or anxiety. Instead of obsessing over what others think of us or fearing what might go wrong, we can focus on the task at hand and trust that we have the skills to handle whatever comes our way. Mindfulness helps us cultivate a sense of calm and clarity, which in turn fosters confidence. Finally, self-care plays a crucial role in building inner confidence. Taking care of our physical, emotional, and mental well-being is essential for maintaining a strong sense of self. When we invest in ourselves by getting enough rest, exercising, eating well, and engaging in activities that bring us joy, we are reinforcing our value and worth. Self-care nourishes our mind and body, helping us to feel more confident and capable in all areas of our lives. In conclusion, building inner confidence is a journey that requires patience, self-compassion, and dedication. It is not about perfection or never experiencing doubt, but about developing the strength to face challenges, accept ourselves as we are, and trust in our abilities. By taking consistent action, setting and achieving goals, embracing failure, surrounding ourselves with positivity, practicing mindfulness, and caring for ourselves, we can cultivate a deep and lasting inner confidence that empowers us to live with purpose and authenticity. Setting boundaries without anger is an essential skill for maintaining healthy relationships and preserving your well-being. It involves communicating your limits clearly and assertively without aggression, resentment, or frustration. Boundaries help define what is acceptable to you and what isn't, allowing you to protect your time, energy, and emotional health. However, many people struggle with setting boundaries because they fear conflict, rejection, or upsetting others. As a result, they either don't set boundaries at all, or they do so in a way that is laced with anger or frustration. Learning to set boundaries without anger is not only about ensuring your needs are met, it's also about communicating with respect, maintaining your peace, and nurturing positive relationships. The first step in setting boundaries without anger is clarity of mind. It's important to be clear with yourself about what your limits are before communicating them to others. Often, people react out of frustration because they've allowed their boundaries to be violated repeatedly without addressing the issue. This buildup of resentment leads to an emotional outburst when eventually they do try to set a boundary. To avoid this, take time to reflect on what is acceptable to you in different areas of your life, whether in personal relationships, at work, or in social settings. Know what behaviors, actions, or requests make you feel uncomfortable, stressed, or overwhelmed. By identifying your boundaries in advance, you can set them with confidence and avoid the emotional charge that comes from being caught off guard. Once you have a clear understanding of your boundaries, the next step is to communicate them calmly and assertively. Setting a boundary without anger requires you to express yourself confidently without sounding passive or aggressive. It is not enough to simply say no or express discomfort. You must do so in a way that is respectful of both yourself and the other person. Use I statements to communicate how you feel and what you need, rather than blaming or accusing the other person. For example, instead of saying, "You always ask me to do things I don't want to do," you might say, "I feel overwhelmed when I take on too many responsibilities, so I need to say no to some things." This shifts the focus from the other person's behavior to your own needs and feelings, making the conversation less confrontational and more about finding a solution that works for both parties. One of the main reasons people fail to set boundaries without anger is because of their fear of rejection or guilt. Many individuals worry that setting a boundary will disappoint others or make them seem selfish. They may fear that others will be angry or hurt, and as a result, they avoid setting boundaries altogether. However, this approach only leads to resentment and burnout. The key is to remind yourself that setting boundaries is not about rejecting or hurting others. It's about honoring your own needs and taking responsibility for your well-being. By setting boundaries, you're actually teaching others how to treat you with respect, which is an important aspect of any healthy relationship. It's also important to remember that saying no or establishing a limit does not mean you are being unkind or unreasonable. Boundaries are a sign of self-respect, not selfishness. Another crucial aspect of setting boundaries without anger is managing your emotions. It's natural to feel upset or frustrated when someone is pushing against your boundaries, but it's important to manage these emotions in a healthy way. When you feel anger or irritation rising, take a moment to pause before responding. This pause allows you to take a step back, breathe, and assess the situation before reacting. Responding in the heat of the moment can often lead to words or actions that you later regret, which can escalate the situation and cause further tension. Instead, give yourself space to cool down and then assertively communicate your boundaries without letting your emotions drive the conversation. Another helpful technique is to practice active listening when someone challenges your boundaries. Often, people may not realize that they are crossing a line or pushing you too far. By actively listening to their perspective, you can gain a better understanding of their intentions and motivations, which can help reduce feelings of frustration. Listening also shows that you value the other person's feelings, which can make it easier to set your boundaries without anger. Once you've heard their side, you can calmly reiterate your own needs and explain why the boundary is important to you. This mutual respect fosters understanding and can prevent conflict from escalating into anger or resentment. Setting boundaries without anger also involves being consistent. Once you've set a boundary, it's important to stick to it, even if the other person challenges it or tries to push past it. Consistency in enforcing your boundaries teaches others that you are serious about your needs and that your limits are not negotiable. If you allow someone to cross a boundary once and then let it slide the next time, it can send mixed signals and lead to further frustration. However, consistency does not mean rigidity. If circumstances change or you feel differently about a particular boundary, it's okay to reassess and adjust it accordingly. The key is to maintain open communication and ensure that you are being true to your needs and values. A crucial part of setting boundaries without anger is finding the right time and place to have the conversation. Timing can make all the difference in how a boundary is received. Avoid trying to set boundaries when you are in a stressful or emotionally charged situation. Instead, find a calm moment when you can discuss the matter in a rational and respectful manner. This gives both parties the space to express their feelings without being clouded by emotion. When you choose the right time and environment, the conversation is more likely to be productive and less likely to escalate into anger or frustration. Lastly, self-care plays a pivotal role in being able to set boundaries without anger. When you take care of yourself, both physically and emotionally, you are better equipped to handle challenging situations. Regular self-care routines, such as practicing mindfulness, exercise, and getting adequate rest, help you build emotional resilience and manage stress. The more you care for yourself, the better you are at staying calm and composed when situations arise that require you to set boundaries. Self-care also allows you to reflect on your needs and priorities, which makes it easier to recognize when a boundary is necessary and to communicate it without guilt or frustration. In conclusion, setting boundaries without anger is about fostering self-respect, clear communication, and emotional control. It requires clarity of mind, assertiveness, and the ability to manage emotions constructively. By setting boundaries with calmness and respect, you not only protect your own well-being, but also promote healthier, more balanced relationships. It's a skill that can be developed over time with practice and patience, and it ultimately leads to greater peace of mind and stronger connections with others. Emotional detachment is the ability to separate yourself emotionally from situations, people, or events that may trigger strong feelings. It is not about being cold, indifferent, or uncaring. Rather, it is about maintaining a balanced, healthy emotional state regardless of external circumstances. This practice allows you to navigate life with a sense of calm and clarity without being overly influenced by emotions that can cloud your judgment or hinder your well-being. It is a vital skill for anyone who wants to maintain peace of mind, reduce stress, and avoid being overly reactive in challenging situations. By learning emotional detachment, you can respond to life's ups and downs with greater resilience and control. One of the first steps in practicing emotional detachment is understanding that emotions are natural and unavoidable. Everyone experiences feelings of anger, sadness, frustration, joy, or fear at some point in their lives. These emotions are part of being human. However, it is important to recognize that while emotions are natural, they do not have to control your actions or your state of mind. Emotional detachment is about acknowledging your feelings without allowing them to dictate your behavior or perception of a situation. When you learn to detach from your emotions, you no longer allow them to overwhelm you or drive impulsive decisions. Instead, you can experience them, process them, and then choose how to respond in a way that aligns with your values and goals. A key component of emotional detachment is awareness. You must first become aware of your emotional triggers and recognize when you are becoming emotionally involved in a situation. Often we react automatically to situations without thinking, especially when emotions are running high. For example, when someone criticizes you, you may feel defensive, hurt, or angry. When something goes wrong at work, you may feel frustrated and stressed. These reactions are often instantaneous and habitual. The first step toward emotional detachment is noticing these emotional responses and becoming conscious of how they influence your thoughts and behavior. Once you are aware of your emotional responses, you can then take steps to manage them rather than be controlled by them. Another essential aspect of emotional detachment is mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness allows you to stay present and fully engaged in the current moment without being swept away by your emotions. Mindfulness encourages you to observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment, acknowledging them without becoming attached to them, where you can experience emotions but not be consumed by them. By focusing on the present moment, you reduce the impact of past regrets or future anxieties, allowing you to experience life with a clearer, more objective perspective. Through mindfulness, you can train your mind to observe your emotional responses from a distance, rather than reacting impulsively or getting lost in the emotions of the moment. Another crucial aspect of emotional detachment is the practice of letting go of attachment. Often we become emotionally attached to outcomes, people, or situations, which can lead to stress and disappointment when things don't go as planned. For example, you may become overly attached to a specific outcome at work, or you may find yourself constantly seeking approval from others. When things don't go the way you want, it can create frustration, resentment, or sadness. Emotional detachment teaches you to release these attachments and accept that things may not always go as planned. It encourages you to focus on what you can control, your actions, your mindset, and your responses, while accepting that there are many things outside of your control. Letting go of attachment to specific outcomes allows you to embrace uncertainty with more peace and less anxiety. In practicing emotional detachment, self-regulation is key. Emotional detachment doesn't mean suppressing or ignoring your feelings. Rather, it's about learning to manage them. This involves recognizing your emotions, but instead of reacting impulsively, you create space between the feeling and your response. For example, if someone insults you, you might feel anger or frustration. However, instead of reacting immediately and saying something you might regret, you take a moment to breathe and reflect. This pause gives you the opportunity to detach from the intensity of the emotion and choose how you want to respond. Self-regulation helps you respond more thoughtfully and intentionally rather than letting your emotions dictate your behavior. Additionally, practicing emotional detachment requires acceptance of impermanence. Life is constantly changing, and so are our emotions. What feels overwhelming one day may seem insignificant the next. By accepting the impermanence of both situations and emotions, you can detach from the need to hold onto any particular feeling or experience. This perspective helps to prevent emotional attachment to both negative and positive experiences, allowing you to flow with life's changes rather than becoming overly attached to specific outcomes. Whether you're experiencing joy or sorrow, practicing emotional detachment helps you stay grounded, knowing that all emotions, good or bad, are temporary and part of the ebb and flow of life. Another aspect of emotional detachment is detaching from the opinions of others. We often find ourselves deeply affected by the thoughts and judgments of others, whether it's criticism from a friend or praise from a colleague. The opinions of others can sway our emotional state. Emotional detachment helps you separate your self-worth from the opinions and judgments of others. You become less dependent on external validation and more focused on your own beliefs and value. This self-reliance allows you to remain more centered, even when others' opinions may conflict with your own sense of self. By practicing detachment, you learn that other people's views do not define you, and you can remain confident in your decisions and actions regardless of external feedback. Finally, detaching from the need for control is a powerful element of emotional detachment. Many of us become anxious or stressed because we feel the need to control every aspect of our lives. Whether it's trying to manage every detail of a project or attempting to control other people's behavior, the constant need for control can lead to frustration and emotional burnout. Emotional detachment allows you to acknowledge that control is often an illusion. You can do your best and take responsible action, but ultimately there are factors beyond your control. Learning to let go of the need to control outcomes, people, or situations can bring a profound sense of relief and inner peace. It frees you from the emotional burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. In conclusion, practicing emotional detachment is about maintaining emotional balance and resilience in the face of life's challenges. It is a practice of becoming aware of your emotional triggers, managing your responses, and letting go of attachment to people, outcomes, and the need for control. Emotional detachment allows you to experience your emotions without being overwhelmed by them, making it possible to navigate life with greater clarity, peace, and understanding. With consistent practice, emotional detachment becomes a powerful tool for fostering emotional well-being and leading a more grounded, mindful life. Reframing a situation is the practice of changing the way you perceive or interpret an experience, event, or challenge in order to shift your emotional response and find a more constructive or positive perspective. It is a cognitive tool that helps you see things from a different angle, allowing you to respond more effectively to life's difficulties. The way we perceive a situation can greatly influence how we feel about it and how we act in response. When we allow ourselves to be stuck in negative thought patterns, we may feel helpless or overwhelmed. However, by reframing, we can open ourselves up to new possibilities and alternatives, reducing stress and improving our ability to handle adversity. At the core of reframing is the understanding that our interpretation of events is often shaped by our beliefs, past experiences, and mental habits. The same event can be seen in many different ways depending on our mindset. For example, if you fail to meet a deadline, you might view it as a personal failure, leading to feelings of shame or disappointment. Alternatively, you could reframe the situation by focusing on what you learned from the experience, or by seeing it as an opportunity to improve your time management skills. The failure, instead of being a source of negative emotion, can become a stepping stone to growth. One of the most important aspects of reframing is recognizing that your initial perception of a situation is not the only way to interpret it. Our brains are wired to make quick judgments, often based on past experiences or ingrained beliefs. But these automatic reactions are not always accurate or helpful. Reframing encourages you to pause and reflect on your initial response, questioning whether there might be a more beneficial or empowering way to view the situation. This shift in perspective can help you step away from being trapped in negative emotions and instead see the situation as an opportunity for growth, learning, or adaptation. When you reframe a situation, it is helpful to focus on the positive aspects or potential benefits, even in the face of difficulty. This doesn't mean ignoring the challenges or pretending that everything is fine, but rather choosing to look for the silver lining or finding a lesson in the experience. For example, if you face criticism at work, instead of viewing it as an attack on your abilities, you could reframe it as constructive feedback that provides insight into areas where you can improve. By doing this, you take control of the situation and choose to use the feedback as motivation to enhance your performance rather than internalize the criticism and feel demoralized. Reframing also allows you to change the language you use when describing a situation. Language has a powerful impact on our thoughts and emotions, and the words we choose can either amplify negativity or help us gain clarity and perspective. When faced with adversity, many people use language that reinforces feelings of helplessness or defeat, such as "I can't handle this" or "this is impossible." Reframing involves changing this language to something more empowering and solution-focused, such as "this is difficult, but I can handle it," or "I might not know how to solve this yet, but I can figure it out." By adjusting the way you talk about a situation, you can rewire your brain to approach the problem with a more proactive mindset, ultimately fostering resilience and confidence. In addition to focusing on the positive and changing your language, reframing also requires you to broaden your perspective and look at the bigger picture. Sometimes we get so caught up in the immediate details of a situation that we lose sight of the larger context. This narrow focus can amplify stress and anxiety. Reframing helps you zoom out and recognize that the current situation is just one moment in time and it does not define your entire life. By considering the long-term impact or by acknowledging the full range of experiences you've had, you can put the situation into perspective. For instance, if you're experiencing a setback at work, you might remind yourself of the many accomplishments and successes you've had in the past and how this setback doesn't diminish your overall journey. This broader perspective allows you to detach from the immediate emotional reaction and see the situation with greater clarity. Reframing also involves embracing uncertainty. Often we become frustrated or anxious when things don't go according to plan or when we don't have all the answers. Instead of focusing on the discomfort of uncertainty, reframing encourages you to view it as a natural and inevitable part of life. Life is filled with unknowns, and by accepting that we cannot control every aspect, we open ourselves to new experiences and possibilities. Instead of stressing over the unknown, try to see it as an opportunity for creativity, adaptability, and growth. For instance, if you're facing a difficult decision and feel unsure of the outcome, reframing could involve seeing it as a chance to trust your intuition and learn more about your values rather than dwelling on the fear of making a mistake. Another crucial aspect of reframing is taking responsibility for your response. It's easy to feel like a victim when faced with challenges or difficult people, but reframing empowers you to take ownership of how you react to situations. You can't always control external events, but you can always control your response. Reframing allows you to step out of the mindset of "why is this happening to me?" and instead focus on "how can I respond to this in a way that aligns with my values?" By taking responsibility for your emotional response, you shift the power back into your hands, giving you greater control over your emotional state and actions. Reframing doesn't only apply to negative situations, it can also be used to embrace change and uncertainty in positive scenarios. Life constantly changes, and reframing can help you adapt to new opportunities and challenges with an open mind. For example, if you are given a promotion at work, you might initially feel overwhelmed by the additional responsibilities. Instead of focusing on the stress and pressure, you can reframe the situation by seeing the promotion as a chance to develop new skills, expand your network, and prove your capabilities. This positive reframing helps you embrace growth rather than resist it. Reframing requires practice and patience. It's not something that comes naturally to everyone, and it's easy to fall back into old thought patterns. However, with consistent effort, reframing can become a habitual way of thinking. When you encounter challenges or stressful situations, remind yourself to pause, reflect, and consider whether there is another way to view the circumstances. Over time, you will find that you become more adept at shifting your perspective, allowing you to face life's challenges with greater emotional resilience and mental clarity. In conclusion, reframing is a powerful tool for transforming your perception of situations, events, and challenges. By shifting your mindset, changing your language, focusing on the positive, broadening your perspective, and embracing uncertainty, you can respond to life's difficulties with greater confidence and resilience. Reframing allows you to take control of your emotional responses, reduce stress, and focus on growth, opportunity, and adaptability. Although it takes practice, the ability to reframe situations can significantly improve your emotional well-being and overall quality of life. Making peace your priority is a conscious decision to focus on cultivating inner calm and harmony in your life. It's about intentionally choosing peace over chaos, calm over conflict, and clarity over confusion, even in the midst of challenges and stresses. It can be easy to become overwhelmed by external pressures and lose sight of the peace that resides within. However, by making peace your priority, you shift your focus away from the external world and toward your own emotional and mental state, empowering yourself to navigate life with greater ease, clarity, and resilience. One of the first steps in making peace your priority is to recognize the importance of inner peace. Inner peace is the foundation of emotional well-being. Without it, you may find yourself reacting impulsively, feeling overwhelmed by negative emotions, or struggling with anxiety and stress. When you prioritize peace, you are acknowledging that your emotional state has a profound impact on your overall quality of life. Inner peace is not about avoiding difficult emotions or pretending that everything is fine when it's not. Rather, it is about learning to be at peace with yourself, accepting your emotions without judgment, and understanding that peace is a state of mind that you can cultivate, no matter the circumstances around you. Self-awareness plays a vital role in making peace your priority. To make peace a priority, you must first become aware of the things in your life that disrupt your inner calm. This could include toxic relationships, negative thought patterns, stressful environments, or a lack of boundaries. Once you identify these sources of disturbance, you can begin to take proactive steps to manage or eliminate them. Self-awareness allows you to understand when your emotions are being triggered and helps you choose how to respond in a way that promotes peace. Rather than reacting impulsively or getting swept away in frustration, you can pause, reflect, and choose a more peaceful response. Being aware of what disrupts your peace gives you the power to take control of your emotional state, instead of letting external circumstances dictate how you feel. Creating boundaries is another crucial aspect of prioritizing peace. Boundaries are essential for maintaining your emotional and mental well-being, as they protect you from people or situations that may drain your energy or cause unnecessary stress. When you make peace your priority, setting clear boundaries becomes a necessary part of your self-care routine. Boundaries are not about shutting others out, but rather about protecting your own sense of peace and ensuring that your needs are met in a healthy way. This may involve saying no to commitments that cause you anxiety, limiting time spent with negative or toxic people, or distancing yourself from situations that are emotionally draining. Setting boundaries allows you to preserve your inner calm, enabling you to handle challenges with greater resilience and composure. Prioritizing peace also involves letting go of control. Many of us spend a significant amount of energy trying to control aspects of our lives, whether it's the behavior of others, outcomes, or situations that are beyond our control. However, the desire to control everything can lead to frustration, stress, and a lack of peace. When you make peace your priority, you learn to embrace the idea that not everything can be controlled. You accept that life is unpredictable, and rather than trying to manipulate every situation, you focus on how you can respond in a peaceful and constructive way. Letting go of the need for control allows you to relax into the flow of life, reducing the mental and emotional strain that comes from resisting the natural course of events. Another important aspect of making peace a priority is forgiving yourself and others. Holding on to past grudges or beating yourself up for past mistakes can be a major source of emotional turmoil. When you prioritize peace, you release the weight of resentment, guilt, and regret, making space for healing and growth. Forgiveness does not mean condoning harmful behavior or forgetting about past hurt, but it is about releasing the negative energy that keeps you tethered to the past. By forgiving yourself and others, you free yourself from the burden of emotional baggage, allowing your mind and heart to heal. This process fosters inner peace, as it allows you to move forward without being weighed down by old wounds or unresolved conflicts. A key component of making peace a priority is nurturing a positive mindset. The way you think has a profound impact on your emotional state. When you focus on negative thoughts or worry about the future, you create an environment of stress and anxiety. However, when you prioritize peace, you consciously choose to focus on positive thoughts and practices that promote well-being. This might involve cultivating gratitude, practicing mindfulness, or shifting your mindset to focus on solutions rather than problems. Nurturing a positive mindset helps you stay calm in the face of adversity and approach life with a sense of optimism and hope, which in turn supports your overall sense of peace. In addition to nurturing a positive mindset, self-care plays a critical role in prioritizing peace. Taking care of your physical, mental, and emotional needs is essential for maintaining inner peace. Self-care activities such as exercise, meditation, journaling, or spending time in nature help you recharge and reset so you can approach life with a clear and peaceful mind. When you prioritize self-care, you are making the commitment to put your well-being first, which ultimately contributes to greater emotional resilience and peace. It's important to recognize that self-care is not selfish. It's an essential practice that allows you to be the best version of yourself for others and for your own personal growth. Mindfulness is another powerful tool in making peace your priority. Mindfulness involves being fully present in the moment without judgment, and it can be particularly effective in reducing stress and promoting inner calm. By practicing mindfulness, you train your mind to stay focused on the present rather than getting lost in worry, regret, or anxiety about the past or future. Mindfulness helps you develop greater awareness of your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations, allowing you to respond with more clarity and composure when faced with challenges. By incorporating mindfulness practices into your daily routine, you can cultivate a peaceful and centered state of mind, regardless of external circumstances. Finally, making peace your priority involves practicing compassion and empathy. Compassion allows you to approach both yourself and others with kindness, understanding, and non-judgment. When you are compassionate, you create an atmosphere of emotional safety that promotes peace and connection. By practicing empathy, you can understand others' perspectives, which helps to reduce conflicts and misunderstandings. Compassion and empathy not only enhance your relationships, but also create a more peaceful world around you. In conclusion, making peace your priority is a conscious choice that requires commitment, self-awareness, and consistent effort. It involves creating boundaries, letting go of control, forgiving yourself and others, nurturing a positive mindset, prioritizing self-care, practicing mindfulness, and embracing compassion. When you make peace a priority, you take control of your emotional state and navigate life with greater ease, resilience, and clarity. Ultimately, prioritizing peace allows you to cultivate a sense of inner calm that enables you to face life's challenges with grace and strength, fostering a more fulfilling and balanced life.